I was working the night shift at North American Defense Command when everything changed. The first contact appeared on our deep space radar like nothing we had ever seen before. It wasn't an asteroid or comet. This was something organized, fast, and deliberate. The display quickly filled with more targets. First hundreds, then thousands of ships appeared on our screens. The sensors automatically identified them as alien craft. Their heat signatures, hull structures, and engine emissions were completely wrong. Nothing like human technology. The control room went dead silent except for the hum of the computers. Even the constant radio chatter between stations stopped. You didn't need to be a military expert to understand what thousands of warships meant. This wasn't peaceful exploration. This was war. General Maddox stepped forward with his jaw set like stone. "Lock global alert," he ordered. "Patch me to every military commander on the planet now." His voice was calm, but I could see the tension around his eyes. He knew what I knew. Earth had never fought a space war before. Not really. And if this enemy was as dangerous as it looked, we wouldn't have time to prepare properly. The first message from them came 15 minutes later. No introduction, no attempt at diplomacy. Just a deep, cold voice that didn't sound human at all. "This planet is claimed by the Imperial Dominion. All inhabitants will surrender or be destroyed. You have 60 of your seconds to comply. 60 seconds. That's how long they gave 8 billion people to surrender their world. I remember looking through the reinforced observation window toward the night sky. You couldn't see their ships with the naked eye yet, but you could feel something had changed. There was a weight in the air, like the atmosphere itself was warning us of danger. My stomach twisted, not from fear, but from a slow, growing anger. Whoever these aliens were, they thought we would just roll over and give up. They thought Earth was just another rock to add to their empire. They had no idea what kind of people lived here. The orders came down fast. All major orbital defense platforms were armed and ready. Railgun satellites powered up. Surface-to-orbit missile silos locked onto targets. Even the secret military installations that politicians swore didn't exist came online. Power grids flickered as cities unknowingly fed energy into weapon systems they had never been told about. The countdown hit 0. Their armada dropped into high orbit in a formation so massive it blocked out entire constellations. Their lead ships opened fire first, sending brilliant streams of energy cutting through the atmosphere like spears of lightning. But their weapons never reached the surface. I can still hear the sound of Earth's counterattack. The gut-shaking boom of our response echoed across the planet. Kinetic slugs fired at a fraction of light speed punched through alien hulls, like they were made of paper. Explosions rippled across the sky, some so bright they turned night into day. 100 ships were destroyed in the first 5 seconds. Another 1,000 in the next 20 seconds. The aliens didn't understand our weapons. That was their first mistake. Their second mistake was underestimating what a cornered species would do to survive. By the time the first minute was over, their supposedly invincible fleet was nothing more than burning debris, falling through our upper atmosphere. The survivors ran. No threats. No promises of revenge, just silence as they fled. But I knew that silence didn't mean victory. This was just the opening move of something much larger. None of us slept that night. The glow of burning alien wreckage lit the upper atmosphere in streaks of red and gold, drifting slowly as gravity pulled the remains of their ships earthward for hours. News feeds showed alien hulls tumbling through space like dead fish, some breaking apart in bright, silent explosions before vanishing into the clouds below. People in cities across the world cheered. Strangers hugged in the streets. You could hear the relief and celebration in news broadcast. Many believed we had just witnessed humanity's finest hour. Part of me wanted to feel that pride. Part of me wanted to grab a bottle, step outside, and scream into the night that we had beaten them. But I couldn't celebrate. I sat in the command center with my headset still on, watching tactical feeds while celebrations rolled across the globe. General Maddox didn't smile once, and neither did I. We had both seen enough wars to know the truth. Nobody sends a fleet that size without having more ships to send. And nobody walks away from such a humiliation without planning to come back harder. By 5 in the morning, our analyst had broken down the battle in detail. The Imperial shields, if you could even call them that, were designed for plasma weapons, particle beams, and maybe light railgun fire. But our planetary defense grid didn't fight like that. We threw pure mass at them. Big, ugly chunks of tungsten wrapped in electromagnetic coils and launched at velocities that made them more destructive than nuclear weapons. It wasn't elegant or advanced technology. It was simple physics, and physics didn't care how sophisticated their armor was. When you take a 6-ton tungsten slug traveling at 12 kilometers per second and slam it into a ship the size of a football stadium, It doesn't matter if you're from Earth or from an empire 1,000 light years away. You're not surviving that impact. That's why their fleet didn't last a minute. But this also told us something important. They had come expecting to face a civilization, maybe a century or two behind them technologically. They didn't expect us to fight like barbarians with space-age clubs. They had miscalculated badly. And now they would adapt their tactics. General Maddox called me into the war room just after dawn. He didn't bother with small talk. The main display showed our solar system, with every planetary body marked as either friendly or unknown. Earth was lit up like a fortress, bristling with defensive weapons. The moon was covered with defensive satellites. Mars had only minimal research outposts. Beyond that, the outer planets were dark and undefended. They're going to regroup, Maddox said, pointing to the distant Oort cloud at the edge of our solar system. Our deep scans show movement out there. Not a retreat, but a redeployment. When I asked how big their remaining force was, he hesitated before answering. We can't tell yet, but it's big enough to be a serious threat. I leaned against the table, understanding the situation. So they tested our defenses, found the front gate locked, and now they're looking for another way in. Maddox nodded grimly. Exactly. And this time they'll be ready for our weapons. That's when I realized the ugly truth. That first battle had been a real war. It had been an introduction, a probe of our capabilities. And we had just embarrassed the kind of people who burned entire planets for sport. By noon, civilian leaders started making their voices heard. The president gave an address, full of strong words about Earth's unity and the unbreakable human spirit. The United Nations called for global cooperation, emergency funding for planetary defense, and diplomatic efforts to open channels of understanding with the enemy. That last part almost made me laugh. You don't send 10,000 warships to shake hands and make peace. Meanwhile, our intelligence teams worked frantically to analyze wreckage from the battle. Some alien ships had crashed into the oceans intact. The Navy swarmed those impact zones, pulling alien technology out of the water before anyone with a camera could take pictures. Other fragments came down in rural areas, sparking dozens of conspiracy theories before the military clamped down on information. I got my first look at a captured whole section that afternoon. Up close, it wasn't as alien as you might think. It was made of metallic composites with modular construction and design logic we could recognize. But the material density was different, stronger in some ways, more brittle in others. It looked advanced until you realized it wasn't built to survive the kind of punishment we had hit them with. Our engineers were excited about studying the alien technology. I wasn't impressed. All I saw was a warning. Next time, the aliens would build ships that could take our heaviest punches. Around 6 that evening, we picked up the first transmissions from outside our solar system. We couldn't translate the alien language yet, but the tone said everything we needed to know. The communications were harsh, clipped, and urgent. Our linguistics computer started identifying repeated sound patterns, the kind you use when giving orders. Whatever those alien words meant, they were being shouted a lot across their communication networks. That night, Maddox pulled me aside for a private conversation. We need to talk about Blackfire, he said. The name hit me like a physical blow. Blackfire wasn't in any public records. It barely existed even in classified files. It was a fail-safe weapon, the ugliest kind of device hidden in the outer solar system, designed to be used only if Earth was truly facing complete annihilation. You think it's time to consider it? I asked quietly. I think, he said carefully, we don't get a second chance if they come back with real firepower. Blackfire was not something you could point at an enemy without terrible consequences. Imagine taking the biggest nuclear warhead you've ever heard of and giving it the ability to crack planets apart. The fallout alone would be catastrophic. But against a large fleet, it was the one weapon they couldn't shield against. I didn't answer him right away. Not because I disagreed, but because I knew what it meant if we actually armed those weapons. There would be no going back. After that point, you would no longer be defending your home. You would be preparing to burn someone else's home to the ground. At 10 that night, I left the war room and stepped outside for the first time all day. The night sky was clear. The burning wreckage had faded to faint streaks, most of it already fallen to Earth or pushed into decaying orbits. To anyone else, it probably looked peaceful. To me, it looked like the calm before a hurricane. Sure enough, at 3 in the morning, the next alert came in. The alien signatures in the Oort cloud had multiplied 5 times over. Maddox's voice came through my earpiece like gravel. They're not regrouping anymore. They're coming. This time, there was no 6-second warning, no arrogant broadcast. Just raw, silent movement, the kind predators make when they're done playing with their food. We pushed our planetary defense grid to full readiness. Missile stocks were topped off. Orbital rail guns cycled and locked onto targets. Pilots climbed into cockpits of the kind of advanced ships the public thought belonged in science fiction. We had learned a lot from tearing apart those first alien wrecks, and we didn't waste those lessons. As the first enemy contacts crossed the Kuiper Belt, I got my first look at their new ship designs. Maddox had been right. They had adapted fast. These were sleeker hulls with layered armor. No massive, slow-moving carriers this time, just pure warships. Every one of them built to fight and survive. Our analyst estimated another 10 hours before the alien fleet would reach Earth. 10 hours to prepare for the second round of fighting. 10 hours to figure out whether the physics that had saved US last time would work again. And in the back of my mind, that one word kept returning: Blackfire. I didn't want to use it. Not because I was afraid of the enemy, but because I was afraid of what it would make us. You can't unleash that kind of destructive power without changing who you are as a people. You stop being soldiers and start being destroyers. And destroyers, sooner or later, turn their weapons on everything around them. But I knew what Maddox was thinking. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about sending a message. The same kind of message the aliens had tried to send US when they dropped out of orbit demanding our surrender. The kind of message that makes someone think twice before they ever come back to threaten you again. At 6 in the morning, the President and the Joint Chiefs joined us in the war room. Maddox laid out our options plainly. We could meet the alien fleet with conventional defenses and hope they hadn't completely solved our tactical playbook, or we could arm Blackfire immediately, intercept them before they crossed Neptune's orbit, and make sure none of them ever reported back home about our capabilities. The room went quiet. All eyes turned to me, not because I had more authority than anyone else, but because I had been the one watching the radar screens during the first contact, the one who saw them coming before anyone else did, the one who understood what was really at stake here. Hey, won't stop, I said finally, not until someone makes them afraid. Not cautious, not respectful, afraid. Maddox didn't smile. He just nodded once and gave the order we all knew was coming: Blackfire armed. And just like that, the countdown began. Not to an invasion, but to a strike that could end entire civilizations. The order to arm Blackfire wasn't given lightly, but once it was given, the atmosphere in the war room changed completely. No more political posturing or speeches about unity. Everyone there knew what we were about to do, and none of us would come out of it the same people we had been. Blackfire wasn't a single missile system. It was a network of automated launch stations hidden throughout the Kuiper Belt, dormant for decades and cloaked against detection. Each launcher held a projectile the size of a passenger jet wrapped in dense exotic alloys, and packed with a warhead that didn't simply explode. It collapsed space itself. The physics were terrifying. Each device created a controlled singularity. Upon detonation, lasting less than a second but long enough to swallow anything within a defined radius. Before collapsing in on itself, ships, debris, even light signals would be gone. Not broken or destroyed, but completely erased from existence. When our engineers had first proposed this weapon system, I thought they were insane. But when you study records of interstellar warfare, you realize some enemies don't leave you the luxury of fighting clean wars. The countdown to Blackfire's firing sequence was 8 hours. Our small fleet positioned itself along Neptune's orbit, not to engage the aliens directly, but to herd their approaching ships toward the kill zone. If they broke formation or scattered, we would lose the chance to eliminate them all at once. By the time the alien lead ships crossed Uranus's orbital path, we had visual confirmation of their approach, and they weren't making the same mistakes they had made during their first attack. Their formation was tight and disciplined. No massive carriers or slow dreadnoughts this time. These were wolves, not sheep. Fast attack cruisers flanked by heavier gunships with drone swarms packed between them like a living shield. Their hulls gleamed with some kind of adaptive armor that shifted in response to our sensor scans. They were prepared for rail gun slugs, plasma weapons, even nuclear missiles. I could almost respect the tactical efficiency of their approach. Almost dot in the command center. Every person was locked onto the tactical screens. Maddox stood with his arms folded, watching as our targeting projections updated in real time. Trajectory lock confirmed, the weapons officer reported. When Maddox asked for range, the answer came back: 6 hours to Neptune intercept. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Our plan depended on perfect timing. If the aliens realized what we were doing and pulled back even a few thousand kilometers, we would waste Blackfire on empty space and reveal our most powerful weapon in the process. The alien fleet kept coming without any changes in speed or deviation from their approach vector. They had no idea what was waiting for them. I leaned over the console with my eyes fixed on their lead ship. Its profile was different from the others, sleeker and radiating stronger energy emissions. A command vessel, most likely, if we killed that ship, the rest of their fleet might scatter in confusion 3 hours before intercept. The first probe we had planted in their path sent us crystal clear imagery of the approaching enemy. You don't forget the first time you see the face of something that wants you dead. The alien commander on the bridge of their lead ship was tall and angular, covered in black and armor. Its skin had a pale metallic color that caught light like polished stone. Its eyes were pits of gold, cold and seemingly bottomless. But the worst part was its expression. Not rage or fear or even contempt. It was smiling with complete confidence, as if the outcome of this battle was already written and decided in their favor. Lock firing solutions. Maddox ordered as the clock ticked down at 40 minutes before firing time. The enemy formation began to shift. Not a retreat, but a tactical deployment. Smaller ships broke off from the main group and surged ahead. Drone swarms spread out like ink in water. They were scouting and probing for weaknesses in our defenses. They're going to detect the launchers. I muttered to Maddox. Not if we keep them busy, he replied without looking away from the tactical display. That's when our forward patrol ships lit their engines and dove straight into the alien swarm. The screens filled with weapons fire. Missiles corkscrewed through the void, rail gun slugs sparked against drone armor, and defensive flares bloomed like dying stars. Those pilots knew they weren't coming back alive. Their job wasn't to win the engagement. It was to distract the aliens and keep their attention focused on the wrong threat. And they carried out their mission without hesitation. One of our patrol ships, the Iron Wind, plowed directly into the side of an alien gunship, tearing it open in a silent spray of venting atmosphere. The video feed cut out, but the damage was done. The enemy focused their attention on the skirmish, adjusting their formation just enough to keep them in Blackfire's targeting corridor. 20 minutes before firing time, alien drones tore through our screening force, shredding ships like paper. But every second they spent chasing our decoys was another second closer to the trap. Blackfire launch sequence initiated. The weapons officer called out. On the tactical map, 12 icons lit up throughout the Kuiper belt. One by one, they flashed green as weapon systems came online. The countdown hit 0. There was no sound in space. But in my head, I swear I heard the roar of a god waking up. The projectiles streaked from their hidden launch stations, vanishing almost instantly as their drives kicked to full power. No exhaust trails, no energy signatures, nothing the aliens could track in time to react. 7 seconds later, the warheads reached their targets. The first singularity bloomed like a hole punched in reality itself. Ships too close to the detonation point simply vanished, torn into nothingness before their hulls could even buckle under the gravitational stress. Other vessels caught on the edges were sheared in half as if an invisible blade had sliced through them. The second detonation swallowed the center of their formation. Dozens of ships disappeared in an instant, leaving behind only fragments too small to register on our sensors. By the time the fourth detonation occurred, their command vessel was gone. No explosion, no wreckage, just complete absence. As if it had never existed in the first place, the surviving alien ships broke formation. Instantly, their tight military discipline shattered as vessels veered off in every direction, desperate to escape the kill zone. But Blackfire's remaining projectiles were still incoming, hunting them down with cold precision. 10 seconds after the last warhead detonated, the battlefield was completely empty. No survivors, no distress signals, no debris larger than a human fist. We had done the impossible. We had erased an entire enemy fleet from existence. The war room didn't cheer. Nobody spoke. We all just stared at the tactical map, at the empty void where thousands of enemy ships had been moments before, and understood exactly what we had unleashed. General Maddox finally broke the silence. Get a transmission ready. Shortwave burst. On the directional. I knew what he was planning before he explained it. A message. Not to any survivors, because there were none, but to whoever commanded the Imperial forces. When the communication channel opened, Maddox didn't bother with military titles or diplomatic language. This is Earth, he said, his voice flat and almost bored. Send another fleet, and we will erase it too. He cut the transmission without waiting for any reply. The official reports would later call it a decisive victory. News networks would discuss it like it was a miracle of human ingenuity and courage. But I had seen the faces of everyone in that command room when the singularities bloomed across space. We all knew what it really represented. It was a line we could never uncross. Blackfire had worked well, and somewhere in the cold darkness between the stars, Alien commanders now knew that humanity possessed the kind of weapons that could bite back with unimaginable force. The real question wasn't whether they would attempt another attack. The question was whether we would survive the next encounter, without burning down the entire galaxy around us in our desperation to win.